Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine, if you will, just mapping out a family tree.
Right.
Picture tracking down cousins, digging through old census records, and really trying to figure out how everyone connects.
A lot of work.
It is. Now take that image and expand it so the family tree spans literally thousands of years. It covers multiple continents, involves ancient curses, hidden Templar treasures,
And everyone on it is a cartoon duck.
yes, everyone is a cartoon duck.
Yeah.
Today, we are opening up a massive, meticulously detailed Wikipedia article entirely dedicated to the sprawling genealogy and lore of Clan McDuck.
If you were picturing us sitting in, a warmly lit mahogany-paneled library right now, surrounded by ancient Scottish maps,
I mean, that's exactly the vibe.
it is the exact right mindset for this deep dive. Because taking a closer look at this source material reveals that this isn't just about a Saturday morning cartoon character.
Definitely not.
We are looking at an epic, multi-generational saga. It traces the very origins of wealth, frugality, and incredibly complex family psychology.
Our mission today is to extract the absolute best, most fascinating nuggets from this fictional family tree just for you.
Yeah, filter out the noise.
Exactly. If you are the kind of listener who loves looking at things from multiple perspectives and who wants that thorough aha moment knowledge, but without drowning in info overload, this is a masterclass.
It really is.
We are going to look at how comic book writers constructed a backstory that is honestly as complex and rich as real-world history. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the architects of this lore. I mean, how does a multi-generational duck dynasty even begin to take shape on paper?
So the foundation was actually poured in the 1940s and 50s.
Oh, wow, that early.
Yeah, by a legendary comic book author named Carl Barks. He had been creating these incredibly popular stories starring Donald Duck, and to keep the plots fresh, he started just, dropping in new relatives.
Just inventing them.
Pretty much. He introduced the impossibly lucky cousin Gladstone Gander, and of course the impossibly wealthy Uncle Scrooge McDuck. But the connective tissue between all these different birds wasn't strictly defined at first.
Right.
Barks was simply inventing relatives on the fly to serve whatever adventure he was writing that month.
So if Barks was just creating characters as plot devices, when did someone actually sit down and turn those random appearances into a coherent historical timeline?
Well, that began in 1948
Okay.
with a story Barks wrote called The Old Castle Secret. In that specific issue, Scrooge and his nephews go looking for hidden treasure in their ancestral home, McDuck Castle.
Setting the stage.
Exactly. That was the true introduction to the clan's backstory. Behind the scenes, Barks actually sketched out a crude version of the family tree just for his own personal reference.
Like a cheat sheet.
A literal cheat sheet.
Yeah.
He was essentially trying to figure out how his own characters were related so he wouldn't contradict himself in future issues.
Yeah. It totally makes sense that he needed a cheat sheet. But a private sketch is a long way from the massive encyclopedia we are looking at today. Who took that basic outline and turned it into this sprawling, thousands of years long epic?
For that, we have to leap forward to the 1990s to meet Don Rosa.
Don Rosa.
Rosa was an incredibly talented writer, artist, and a massive fan of Carl Barks' original work. The Egmont Group, which was the publishing house Rosa worked for, gave him an incredibly ambitious commission.
What did they want him to do?
They wanted him to create the definitive biography of Scrooge McDuck and a cohesive family tree to end decades of comic contradictions.
A small task.
No. Rosa meticulously gathered what he called Barksian facts.
Barksian facts, that's great.
Right. These were tiny throwaway clues and historical references scattered across decades of old Barks comics. And he wove them into a massive 12-part saga called The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck.
When you think about canon in comic books, we aren't talking about a single author writing a single planned-out timeline. We were talking about dozens of writers across decades, all just kind of stepping on each other's toes.
It's messy.
Super messy. Rose's job wasn't just writing a story, it was an act of archaeological continuity. Did he view his version as the undisputed law of the land?
Not at all. And his humility throughout that monumental process is actually remarkable.
How so?
In the introduction to his saga, Rosa explicitly stated that his work was just his personal telling of Scrooge's life. He didn't expect other writers to adhere to it.
That's rare for a creator.
It really is. It highlights the deeply collaborative, fluid nature of comic book canon. He built this towering historical edifice, but recognized it was just one interpretation of the mythology.
Let's actually travel to the ancestral seat of that mythology. The geography the writers chose is brilliantly specific.
It really grounds the story.
It does. The source material places McDuck Castle in Dismal Downs, located in Rannoch Moor. And for those of you listening, Rannoch Moor is a real, actual moorland area in Scotland.
Very bleak, very atmospheric.
Yes. In the comics, the nearest village to the castle is the fictional McDuck. So how far back does this fortress actually go in the timeline?
The comic continuity places the castle's first appearance on the historical timeline in the year 946.
Over 1,000 years ago.
Yep. It was originally built when the area was under siege by the Saxons. It served as the home of the clan chief for centuries. However, the clan didn't hold on to it peacefully.
What happened?
Well, in 1675, the McDucks were actually run out of their own ancestral home.
Wait, a wealthy Scottish clan gets completely chased out of their own fortress? What kind of army does it take to dislodge them?
That's the funny part. It didn't take an army. It took a monstrous devil dog roaming the Dismal Downs.
Devil dog.
A giant glowing hound. The clan fled in absolute terror. Though, years later, the lore reveals this was actually a massive plot by their bitter rivals, Clan Whiskerville.
Clan Whiskerville. Amazing.
They used the fake beast to scare the McDucks off the land so they could claim it for themselves.
A giant glowing hound scaring heirs off an estate. That is a brilliant nod to the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Completely.
But comic book continuity is famous for having multiple timelines. Do other adaptations play with this exact same Scottish location?
They absolutely do. If you look at the DuckTales continuity, there is a totally different but equally fascinating origin for the castle.
Oh.
In that version, Scrooge's great-great-grandfather, a duck named Silas, built the castle. But to save on construction costs, he incorporated the castle into an existing Druid stone circle.
Huh. Stealing a sacred monument to save a few bucks on granite. That sounds like a terrible real estate decision that is bound to backfire.
The Druids certainly thought so.
I bet.
They were furious about their sacred meeting place being stolen, so they sought revenge using trained phosphorescent hounds to scare the clan away.
More glowing dogs.
Exactly. And the lore escalates wildly in the 2017 DuckTales television series.
What did they do?
Silas's use of those discount Druid stones actually cursed Scrooge's parents with immortality.
Wow.
Yeah, binding them to a castle that only appears in our dimension once every 5 years.
That is such a fantastic escalation of the mythology. Speaking of the clan's visual identity, there is a piece of trivia about their tartan that completely changes how you view these meticulous details.
Oh, the green and orange.
Yes. Clan McDuck has a very distinct green and orange tartan pattern, but Carl Barks didn't actually choose those colors.
How did that specific pattern become canon then?
So when the story was first published in 1960, the colorists at Dell Comics just happened to pick green and orange completely at random.
Just a total fluke.
Total fluke. When Don Rosas later drew the tartan decades later, he strictly adhered to that random choice out of absolute respect for the original printing.
That is dedication.
Right. Even though some European publishers kept getting it wrong and changing the colors, Rosa insisted on the Dell Comics accident.
Canon is so often just an accident of production that a later writer decides to treat as gospel.
Yeah.
Now, tracing the lineage of the Ducks who wore that green and orange tartan is a journey into hilarity and disaster. The history of the McDuck ancestors in the Dark and Middle Ages reads like a masterclass in how not to run a dynasty.
I know the timeline stretches back absurdly far. We can trace the roots all the way back to 2050 BC with King Scrooge Shaw and Prince Donduck.
Oh, they only get more ridiculous. Just over a century later, in 1057, we meet Sir Quackley McDuck. He was the clan chief when the real historical figure, King Macbeth, was killed.
The actual Macbeth.
The actual one. Macbeth had given Quackley a massive treasure chest in exchange for his support in the war. Quackley protected this treasure, but he became deeply, deeply obsessed with it.
How obsessed are we talking?
So obsessed that he accidentally trapped himself inside the castle walls while trying to hide it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, dying alongside the gold. His ghost supposedly still protects the castle. In the comics, that very ghost actually saves a young Scrooge in 1877 and is the one who tells him to go to America to seek his fortune.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about Sir Murdoch McDuck in 1066. This ancestor was a businessman who literally patented the longbow.
A visionary.
When the Normans invaded England, he signed a massive military contract to supply them with enough longbows to fight off the invaders. That sounds like a brilliant business move. Where is the catch?
The catch is that the Normans didn't have enough arrows to actually shoot from the bows.
Let me guess.
Because Sir Murdoch charged extra for the arrows.
It is the medieval equivalent of selling someone a cheap printer and then charging a fortune for the ink cartridges.
That is exactly the same business model.
Incredible.
And the catastrophic mismanagement continued through the centuries. Between 1189 and 1205, Sir Roast McDuck completely bankrupted the clan.
Sir Roast.
Yes, Sir Roast. He offered the clan's vast wealth to the King of Scotland so the king could pay tribute to Richard I of England.
Okay, so a political play.
Right, it was a grand act of patriotism that completely, utterly ruined the family finances.
How did Sir Roast handle the stress of bankrupting his entire lineage?
He raided the king's pantry and literally ate himself to death with gluttony.
You're kidding.
Nope. If you visit the castle in the comics, his memorial suit of armor is actually holding a knife and a fork.
The visual gags are just incredible. Then you have Sir Swampole McDuck in 1220.
Swampole.
He sealed up the castle dungeons and told everyone it was to decrease maintenance costs, which sounds very much like a McDuck excuse.
Very on brand.
In reality, he was just hiding his own secret treasure down there. And we cannot skip over Black Donald McDuck in 1440.
We really can't. Black Donald is a crucial figure. He apparently invented golf, the hammer throw, and the caber toss.
An athletic pioneer.
Yes, but his temper was so unbelievably foul, and his behavior on the green so atrocious that King James II of Scotland had to completely outlaw the sport of golf.
What's fascinating here is how deliberate this character design is on the part of the comic writers.
How do you mean?
Each of these ancient ancestors represents a different, highly magnified facet of Scrooge McDuck's own complex personality.
Oh, absolutely.
You have extreme frugality with Sir Eider, explosive temper with Black Donald, ruthless business acumen with Sir Murdoch, and a fatal obsession with treasure with Sir Quackley.
That's all there.
These traits are passed down through centuries of lineage. It shows that Scrooge isn't just an eccentric billionaire. He is the culmination of 1,000 years of highly specific genetic traits.
So how do we get from bankrupt medieval knights to the modern tycoons? As we move into the early modern era, we see those knightly traits transition into high seas merchant adventures. In 1563, we meet Malcolm Matey McDuck. He served as the first mate on an English Navy frigate called the HMS Falcon Rover, which raided Spanish targets in the Caribbean. And the source material notes a very specific crew member on that ship.
Who was it?
The bosun on that ship was named Pintail Duck.
Ah.
This is a very clever bit of narrative seeding by the writers. It establishes a generational link between the Scottish McDucks and the American Duck family centuries before they officially married into each other.
But perhaps the most tragic and foundational story of this seafaring era belongs to Captain Hugh Seafoam McDuck in 1753.
Seafoam's story is rough.
It is. Since the clan had been driven from Dismal Downs by that fake devil dog, Seafoam moves to Glasgow and turns to the sea. He becomes a very successful merchant with his own ship, the Golden Goose.
Okay.
He signed a contract with a character named Swindle McSue to deliver a massive cargo of horseradish to Jamaica.
Given a name like Swindle McSue, you can imagine the contract was not honored in good faith.
Not at all.
Swindle McSue secretly sabotages the Golden Goose, and the ship sinks. Seafoam manages to survive and get back to Scotland, only to discover the brutal fine print in his contract.
The fine print always gets you.
Always. Because the shipment wasn't completed, he had to forfeit absolutely all of his possessions to McSue.
Wait, Swindle sabotages the ship, and Seafoam is the one who legally loses everything.
Legally, yes.
The sheer injustice of that is staggering. He's left with nothing but the clothes on his back, a silver pocket watch, and his own golden dentures.
It's a hard reset.
That single swindle basically resets the McDuck fortune back to zero, setting the stage for the modern generations to claw their way back up from the gutters of Glasgow.
That struggle brings us to the immediate family, which serves as the true emotional core of this entire saga.
Right, getting closer to the present day.
Before we get to Scrooge's parents, the lore introduces his uncle, Angus Pothole McDuck, born in 1829. He moved to the United States and became a Mississippi riverboat captain.
Pothole seems like the ultimate colorful relative.
He really is.
He raced his steamboat against his rival Porkerhog, which resulted in both of their boats sinking. He spent a decade as a professional poker player, eventually hired a young Scrooge to work on his boat, and then retired to New Orleans to write highly exaggerated dime novels about his own life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the real psychological depth of Clan McDuck lies with Scrooge's father, Fergus McDuck.
Argus.
Fergus is, without a doubt, the emotional crux of Dawn Rose's entire narrative. Fergus and his wife, Downey O'Drake, were poor, working-class mill workers in Glasgow. But Fergus saw incredible potential in his son.
Everyone knows about Scrooge's famous number one dime. The very first American dime he ever earned shining shoes in Scotland, which supposedly inspired his relentless drive for wealth.
Right, the origin of his fortune.
But the encyclopedic lore reveals a massive twist about that dime. Fergus secretly paid a ditch digger to give Scrooge that specific American coin for shining his shoes.
He set the whole thing up.
Hold on, isn't that incredibly manipulative? He orchestrated his own son's core foundational memory based on a complete lie.
It might seem harsh, but you have to view it through the lens of a desperate working-class Scottish father trying to prepare his son for an unforgiving world.
Tough love.
Exactly. Fergus did it to teach his son the ultimate lesson in self-reliance. He wanted Scrooge to experience the direct correlation between hard work and reward.
But why an American coin?
By using a foreign coin that couldn't be spent in Scotland, he forced Scrooge to realize the world is vast, tricky, and requires sharp wits to survive.
A brutal but effective parenting strategy.
And Fergus's psychological parenting doesn't stop there. Later in life, Fergus actually uncovered a massive Knights Templar treasure that had been hidden beneath McDuck Castle by their ancestor, Simon McDuck.
Another treasure.
Yes, but he kept it a complete secret from his billionaire son.
Why on earth would he hide a priceless Templar treasure from his own family?
Well, for years, Scrooge thought his father hid it because he disapproved of Scrooge's greedy ways.
That would make sense.
But the truth, revealed in a letter Fergus left behind, was that Fergus fundamentally understood his son's psychology.
What did the letter say?
He knew Scrooge would feel infinitely better and be a much more fulfilled person, building his own fortune from scratch, rather than simply inheriting an ancient one.
Wow. That adds so much incredible heart to what could just be a shallow story about a cartoon duck hoarding gold.
It elevates the whole thing.
And the women of the modern McDuck family are just as vital to the empire. Scrooge has two younger sisters, Matilda and Hortense. How do they fit into this massive financial empire?
Matilda is known for her calm, steady demeanor. When Scrooge was traveling the world aggressively expanding his empire, it was Matilda, along with Hortense, who actually stayed behind in Duckburg.
Keeping the lights on.
Literally. Together, they successfully ran his massive financial empire from 1902 to 1930, keeping the entire operation afloat while he adventured.
While Matilda was calm, the source material explicitly states Hortense was a spitfire.
Oh, totally.
She had an incredibly nasty temper and shocking physical strength. There is this epic anecdote from 1902 where Hortense single-handedly caused the entire U.S. military and the sitting president, Theodore Roosevelt, to flee in terror from Kilmotor Hill.
That is amazing.
And she was armed with nothing but a broom and her bad temper.
A truly formidable matriarch. And Hortense is the crucial bridge in the family tree.
How so?
She meets and marries Quackmore Duck, officially linking the Scottish McDucks to the American Ducks. Hortense and Quackmore are the parents of the twins, Donald Duck and Della Duck, which means all of Donald's famous uncontrollable rage. He inherited it directly from his mother, Hortense, who inherited it from ancestors like Black Donald.
The apple did not fall far from the tree.
Not at all.
Before we wrap up, we have to acknowledge the extended relatives that pop up in the comics to flesh out this world. You've got Gideon McDuck, a moralistic newspaper editor in Italy.
Right.
There's Rumpus McFowl, Scrooge's intensely lazy half-brother. Douglas McDuck, a cousin who looks just like Scrooge and is even stingier, but is hopelessly bad at finding anything but fool's gold.
Naturally.
And Moocher McDuck, a beggar cousin who wears tattered clothes but is actually an absolute sweetheart.
The sheer volume of distinct characters required to build a world this dense over 8 decades of publication is staggering.
So what does this all mean? If you are wondering why we just spent time dissecting the Dark Age ancestors of a cartoon duck, it's because what seems on the surface like a simple children's comic is actually the culmination of a massive, deeply collaborative mythological world-building exercise.
It's genuine mythology.
Whether you are looking at the extreme wealth, the disastrous stinginess, or the explosive tempers, beneath it all are very human stories about family expectations, historical pride, and the deep, driving need for self-reliance. It is basically Shakespeare, but with beaks.
This raises an important question, though. It's a thought I want to leave you to mull over.
What's that?
We know so much about this clan. We know what they were doing in 2050 BC. We know the exact hourly wage of a serf in 946 AD. We know who invented golf.
Right.
Yet, A massive glaring mystery remains in the canon. What happened to Donald Duck's mother, Hortense?
Where did she actually go after running the empire?
According to the source material, Don Rosa was actually prevented by his publishers from using Hortense in later stories.
Really? Why?
The reasoning was that he wouldn't be able to adequately explain why a mother would simply abandon her family, because they couldn't find a satisfying narrative reason that fit the family-friendly brand. The publisher declared her officially dead in their internal notes.
Erasing a character entirely just because the narrative became too difficult to explain. That is a grim reality of the publishing business.
It is. However, comic continuity is always evolving, and writers love to fix old plot holes. A 2024 comic recently suggested a completely different fate for her.
Oh, modern update.
Yeah, it hinted that Hortense didn't abandon her family at all, but was actually an adventurer and a scientist who would travel to Africa to study apes, and that she might still be alive.
That's a twist.
Oh, I leave you with this thought. In a fictional universe where every single historical gap from the Dark Ages to the Industrial Revolution is meticulously, obsessively filled, isn't it wonderfully ironic and incredibly poignant that the fate of one of the most recent, fiery, and deeply important matriarchs of the family remains the clan's greatest unsolved mystery?
A literal ghost in a fully mapped family tree. That is a brilliant place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep exploring the lore, and we will catch you on the next one.